To fear death, gentlemen, is no other than to think oneself wise when one is not, to think one knows what one does not know. No one knows whether death may not be the greatest of all blessings for a man, yet men fear it as if they knew that it is the greatest of evils. Socrates. The human, on average, blinks every 4 seconds. A baby is born on average every 4.5 seconds. The psychedelics revolution, as believed, is coming, and on average, every 1.9 seconds, someone dies. The two human traits, shared regardless of where and how we come to life, are being born and eventually dying. In some parts of our world, death is conceived to be found in many conditions, such as sleep, illness, and even old age, while in others, death is an absolute termination, an absence of life. Some cultures view death as the passing of a veil, a transition to another form of existence, as a journey into a new rebirth, and as a final stop to a fully formed sentence. Before we strive to define death, we must understand that the very definition of it is not something meant to be seen in a common view. Life and death, two versions of an experience. An experiment, a release, a start and an end, an opportunity for redemption, maybe even rebirth. Whichever explanation one chooses based on science, spirituality, religion, atheism, the death end of the stick seems to be final, at least from our current reality. There is no proof nor confirmation on the right way to live. For after all, a confirmation gives base to an assumption, makes it fact. So then, why do we perceive death the way we do? And how does one's perception of death change when meeting head on?
I'm Diego. I'm 35 years old. I've lived most of my life in Italy, even though I'm not 100% Italian, and I've been living in Berlin since around 7 years.
My name is Laure, I'm French. I've been in Berlin since 10 years. It's going to be 10 years this year. And yes, I'm from a small village in France, and I'm 34 years old.
My name is Santiago Alvarez. I'm from Colombia. I'm 33 years old, and I am something between an artist and something freelancer. I don't know.
My name is Nina Kim, and I'm turning 37 years old this year. I was born in Chicago, lived in San Francisco for about 8 years before moving to Berlin. I'm a certified massage therapist and Reiki master, and I founded the psychedelic Reiki massage, which is like my own personal modality that is inspired by all my training and intuitive guidance and healing and psychedelic experiences. And I also founded the Visionary School of Reiki. So I also teach Reiki to students so that people can share Reiki with the rest of the world as well.
So I'll start from the before, and I'd say until around the age of early 20s, I somehow, I didn't really fear death in se, but I feared more the death of the people that were close to me. Yeah, actually until my teenage years, I was convinced that if a parent would die, I would almost kill myself because my life wouldn't have, because I just wouldn't have been able to stand it. I never really thought too much of my own death because I always thought, hey, if I'm dead, I'm dead, and it happens and there's nothing that you can do afterwards. It's It's not like, you know, doing something stupid and you lose a hand and then for your whole life you tell yourself how stupid you've been. I mean, of course, you can die in a stupid way, but you won't be there to tell yourself how stupid you were. And the way that I think of death now, so death is actually, it's probably the thing that most excites me about being alive, because I know that death is going to come anyway, so I just need to make the most of my period before death because it has a limited time. Of course, even there, I don't want death to happen soon, but it's definitely something that, yeah, that makes me live in a certain way.
So before the experience, I never really thought about it. So the experience happened, I was 25, and when you're 20 and younger, I didn't think about it. I really had some talks about it with friends, of course, who actually were really fearing death, but I had a pretty, let's say, non-opinion on death before. And then after do you want to know? After so? After the experience, it was a bit different, because when you're 25 and you live the life and you're a bit, you don't really take care of yourself and you don't sleep certain nights and you really go all in, you think you cannot die, you think you're unbreakable, you think, you know, the body is a crazy machine that never stops and that it's magical. And then I had this experience, and then I realized, oh, I actually my body can break, and I am not unbreakable, and death can happen.
I think as a kid I really had fear of death. I was very scared of that. And well, I don't know, like we were many times in my family, like in complicated situations, I would say. And I'm from Colombia, so it was also very dangerous and violent at that time in the 90s, I would say. And so I kind of know the feeling of having fear of dying, because I guess when you are a little kid, that's the last thing you want to hear about. But when you are getting older, then you kind of start seeing it coming around. Not even, I'm not talking about myself, but like grandparents, parents, I don't know, like it becomes more and more a topic, kind of. Or you get more, you are more conscious about it, I would say. When I was a kid, I was influenced by the church, but I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm more influenced by the social aspect of Latin America that has something very close to death. They love to think about ghosts and all this stuff. But then I moved to Germany and I also became older, so I don't know. And I don't have that connection to death anymore somehow.
I thought like I was immortal, you know, I was when I was 25, and at that time, you know, I was just living my life just very wildly and promiscuously, and it never really occurred to me like, oh yeah, I can die one day, you know. And it was definitely something, you know, in the back of my mind, if I thought about it, maybe I would fear it, but it didn't really occur to me that it could be such a, like it could happen in any moment, essentially.
I was living in Italy and it was probably more around 12 years ago. And well, we went partying with my friends, so we went to a rave party close to where I lived, and it was actually Halloween. So we partied through the whole night, and of course there was a mix of drugs. It was mostly, definitely LSD. Then there was also some ketamine at play, some speed. I mean, those are the three that I clearly remember of. And so we kind of like partied the whole night. So usually I'm not someone who would do coke, and I usually wouldn't do coke, but then I remember a friend of mine had come from Costa Rica, and he managed to bring quite, not a friend, but an acquaintance, he managed to bring quite some amounts from there. And of course, I had quite a good amount of it, and it was really good. So, and of course, I found the perfect mix, having coke with ketamine. And I got to a point where I remember going into the club at one point, and it just felt really weird. Like the high was really strange, and I wasn't really in the mood of dancing. The floor felt strange. Everything felt weird. And I just decided to go back in the car. At that point, I don't remember for how long I was taking the drugs for, but I just remember that at one point I started to feel really weird. I didn't know what was happening, and so what I remember is at one point, so my heartbeat was really weird, physically speaking, and then I felt like I was extremely tired, but at the same time I was too high to fall asleep. But I somehow wanted to shut my eyes, and suddenly I had this feeling, and it's probably correlated to my heartbeat at the time. I just had this feeling that I wasn't going to fall asleep, but I was basically just going to shut my eyes and I would slowly just die. And this feeling was totally real. It wasn't an hallucination or anything. I was convinced about this. So I kind of like, I thought about it, and for me it was something totally natural. It was something that just had to happen. And I don't know why I didn't ask for help, but I just accepted it. And I remember at one point, I don't know how many people were in the car, but I remember something like 10, but it was probably half of that. And the car, of course, had a completely different size and completely different dimensions. And at that point, I did not want to tell anyone anything. And I've asked myself why. Probably because I didn't want them to worry. I felt like I was going into this really beautiful feeling, into this really beautiful dimension. And I just felt like my body was getting ready to die. So I had this feeling for a few hours. And of course, I wasn't doing drugs in the meantime. And so I was in the car, a few hours. I don't know how long, but it felt like a few hours. And then at one point, I started feeling okay again. And I think there was daylight already. It was starting to become day. And I started feeling well again. I mean, the weird thing is I did think about it, but I also took it as, I was just high, and so I kind of like accepted it as normal as well. So I didn't overthink it. I took it as something normal. Hey, I took a lot of drugs, of course, and I was super high. So in that moment, I was just so focused on the emotions, and I was just so focused on the death itself that I didn't really think beyond. I honestly didn't even have any reflections of my life. I was just really focused on that moment, and I was just waiting to die.
I had a problem that needed to be, I need to have an operation, which they did. And it was let's say a simple operation on my nose. They needed to just stop the bleeding inside my nose. So I was just going there, I was fine. Then it turns out that after one day of the operation, my nose continued to bleed, so I had to have another operation because my nose was continuously bleeding, but it was not only my nose, they realized it was also internal bleeding. So it was a lot of my body was very weak. And then they said, okay, it's fine, you can go home. So I was getting ready to go home, and then my nose started to bleed again. And they say, okay, this is really not normal, we need to do a last chance operation. And that's when they came up with the idea of doing a completely new way of type of operation, which is not on my nose, but they were going to my bloodstreams, and they were checking where was the problem, because it was clearly not in the nose. So they told me that they needed to do a third full body anesthesia. And of course, in the paper you sign, they tell you you can die, but you're 25, and I feel like maybe I was putting it lightly because I didn't really realize how serious my situation was. So I went to the operation, was like, yeah, okay. I just sent a text to my parents and I said, okay, third one a charm, and then see you later. So I was really in a good mindset. That was a bit of a weird thing though, because they put you naked on this very cold metal table, kind of like you see in the movie where the dead people are. So when you arrive there, you're like, it's a bit odd, but so you're there, and they put a tiny camera inside you, and basically, this was actually a very important detail. When they put me to sleep, they did a different technique than the last two ones. The last two ones was with the gas, and this one was within the veins. And it hurt me it hurt me so much. It was burning me from the inside. My body took a bit more time to fall asleep, and so they had to put a bit more. And I don't know why they changed the veins or the gas. And so the last thing that I remember was that. And then I felt myself pushing, but really like pushing so hard when you want to, for example, when you're sleeping and you want to stand up and being in a sitting position. And this feeling of pushing, but nothing was happening. And then all of a sudden I was kind of awake, and I had like a lot of things in my arm, and then they straight away woke me. I mean, when I came back, they said, listen, we have to tell you straight away what happened. So your heart stopped, and we needed to reanimate you, and now you're on perfusion because you lost so much blood that you really needed to have fresh blood in your body. And when they told me this, I straight away was like connecting the two with, okay, I really wanted to continue living. I don't know if it was a mind thing or a body thing. I think it was mainly in the mind, of course, because my body didn't move, I didn't do anything. But yeah, I will always remember, it's like somebody was pushing me, and I was like pushing towards so strong. And yeah, and then I came back.
So the accident happened August 12th, 2011. I moved to San Francisco in 2008, and pretty much immediately afterwards, the relationship that I had moved for, we broke up. So I kind of just like immersed myself in like parties and drugs, like terrible relationship. And I remember leading up to this accident, I would have dreams. Like I would have really vivid dreams of just scary things happening, of like the police coming after me, or like, it was just like sirens, like, mer, 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 like stop what you're doing, I was on my way to work. It was like 8 a.m, and in San Francisco, there's a lot of hills, like that's known for its hills. And I was, thinking that I'm immortal, invincible, just like biking real fast. And I just saw like a pedestrian pop out of nowhere from between the cars. And it was like a deer in the headlights moment. I like flew over my handlebars, and then I just like landed straight on my face. And it's incredible because I didn't even have like a scratch on the rest of my body, but I just landed straight on my face. And then it was just like a disillusion type experience. Like it was like my body was like powering off, and then I just like fell into this really like I just felt really calm. Like I didn't feel any pain at all, but yeah, as if I were a machine. It's like you like pulled the plug out, and everything was just like powering off into this void of just like darkness, but like not a scary darkness. It was just really like it was very peaceful. It was really calm. I've traveled transdimensionally before, and sometimes what happens when you travel is you hear, it's like this auto-tune sound. It's like, but it's like a frequency, so it's almost like a light and a sound together. And then I just like felt this slap, and it was like me being like slapped back into my body. And then when I woke up, came back into consciousness, I just saw my feet and was looking around and was like, oh fuck, I'm in an ambulance right now. And then people were like asking me questions, and I was like so disoriented. And then they took me to the emergency room, and I had knocked out my front teeth, and they took the teeth and they actually tried to put them back in. So so for a while, maybe for like a week or two, like the teeth ended up dying because they came out of my head. 2 months later, in October, I was on my way home from work on the bus, and I was kind of in between sleeping and consciousness, and somewhere in between that state, I was zapped with this vision of what happened that day. It was like I was like a third person point of view watching myself, but like I wasn't in this realm. It was like it had to have been like the spirit realm or something, because everything was just like a little like misty and spooky, and there were I could feel other entities around, but like benevolent ones, just like spirits that are around us anyway. And so it brought me back to the day of the accident, and then I'm in the trees watching myself biking really fast down the hill, and then I see myself hit this pedestrian and then fly over my handlebars, land on my face, and then I'm just kind of like this limp body. And I'm watching myself, and watching, maybe like a minute or two later, like one person starts running up, and then another person starts running up, and I see them, punching in their cell phones and talking on the phone, I guess calling the ambulance. And then after a few minutes, the ambulance came, and then I see them put me on the stretcher and then put me back into the ambulance. I was suffering from PTSD at the time. I was really just like emotional and activated by experiencing that. And I just started journaling, and I was like journaling what I saw, and I was like crying. And San Francisco is due for like an earthquake pretty soon, and so I guess that day in the morning there was like a little rumble, but I hadn't felt it. But then while I was writing, like another rumble came, and I was so freaked out. And in my state, as like things started shaking on my wall, I ran out of my room screaming like, oh my God, this is the one, this is it. And my flatmates were like, Nina, it's fine, this happened earlier today. But it just got me so worked up, and then I was thinking of like earthquakes, and thinking of like Pachamama, and then I was thinking of like Peru and Pachamama, and then I was like, oh yeah, Peru and ayahuasca. And then I remembered that I was emailing with a shaman like about a year ago. He's like this American man who moved there in the 90s, who works with like the medicine people there. And in 2013, I went there, but I felt like this whole experience, everything was just like the ultimate calling into the jungle, where I had some of my deepest healing experiences. Oftentimes when people are in these traumatic accidents where essentially like my mind was disconnected from my body, like I didn't feel any pain, and that's just, of course, the protective measure, your body protecting itself so you don't remember. But the cells in your body remember everything that happened, regardless of your conscious memory recall. So what happens when the body and mind disconnect? Oftentimes people coming back into the body don't feel embodied. Like I had a hard time feeling in my body. So what ended up happening, I gained like 7 kilos, and because I would just eat, and I just like couldn't feel my body. And immediately after that accident was I couldn't sleep at night. Like I would have really terrible dreams, and actually every time I closed my eyes to go to sleep, I'd just get like a flickering light in the back of my eyes. And with a bit of Reiki and craniosacral therapy, we found that there's this bone behind your eyeballs called the sphenoid, and it's shaped like a butterfly, and it just like moves very slowly like a butterfly, but with the impact it got stuck, and that's what was causing the flickering of the light. So and we really like worked through that with Reiki and body work and craniosacral therapy, thankfully, because the doctors just like didn't really have answers for me. They put me through all the MRIs, and they're like, oh, your spine is fine, that's great, you didn't snap your neck or anything, but they couldn't really explain what was happening to me And then when I would say like, I'm like depressed, like I just want to die, and they'd be like, oh, here's some antidepressants. I'm like, no, I don't want antidepressants.
Psychedelics are definitely not for everyone, and I definitely don't support who takes psychedelics to look for answers, but I'd rather support who looks for the answer, who has questions and answers the questions first, and then takes psychedelics to reflect on the answers that they've taken, that they've given themselves. Yeah, so basically psychedelics should not be an escape. And this is the same with every kind of drug. They shouldn't be an escape from something, but rather, in my view, people should find themselves, find themselves first. And then, once everything is sorted, say, hey, I can take psychedelics. If people have no answers before taking psychedelics and take psychedelics purely for finding answers, I see this as dangerous, because then, because in my opinion, in my view, people should be capable of finding answers without the support of psychedelics, because then people can fall into a spiral whereby whenever they need to look for answers, they always need to resort to psychedelics. So psychedelics, in my view, can be used to reflect on an answer, and can be used to build on top of an answer and see things from a different perspective. But then I would say, don't take the answer that you had whilst on psychedelics as a final answer, but rather wait some time and then reflect based on your answer before, based on the additional points of view that you got from the use of psychedelics, and then round up everything and come up with a final answer.
So I've done before a tiny bit of psychedelics, so really small dosage of things that was kind of nothing was really happening. I'm very open-minded, so I thought, okay, why not try other psychedelics? So that was that was 2.5 years after the experience. And the problem that I had is that we had a wrong dosage and we had too much. So it was a bad trip experience. The people who were around me, where I was in an open air festival. The people who I was seeing crying, they were dying. I don't know why I was seeing this, but that's what I was seeing. When people cry, they're not in a weak place, but they are vulnerable. And so that's why I was thinking maybe, because then I analyzed my bad trip, of course, and I was like, okay, what happened? Why did you think that? And it was quite intense, because they were dying. And I talk about my friends who had because we were 4 people who had the bad trip at the same time, and we all had different things. And we were all connecting to some like blockage we have or so on. But for me, it was not the death that was the end. For me, it was really the crying that brings you to the death. Like, one of our friends, he really scared of being judged because he's gay, from God, because he's very Catholic. And he had all these things about the sky talking to him, and then all the journalists putting his story out there for everybody to see that he's gay, and it was a trauma for him. And then another friend, she was scared of being abandoned, and all of a sudden everybody disappeared from the festival. So we all had like super intense personal stories.
Once I smoked Salvia divinorum, and it has DMT in it. So this is this molecule that is a very easy molecule that your body has it, and actually like all the organisms have it, and your brain or your body releases when you are born and when you die. And I smoked it once before, but like seeds of a plant, and it had a totally different how do you say, trip than the last one I had. That was only the DMT. A friend of my boyfriend bought it, or she had it, and she offered it to me. And I mean, I always wanted to try it, and I was like, okay, why shouldn't I do it? And we were on the floor, and she gave me the pipe, and then I had to smoke it like for 10 seconds or something like that. And she was like, are you feeling it? And I wanted to say no, but the moment I wanted to speak, I felt it like totally in my body. And it was very interesting because I had the feeling of like this, like rhythm, kind of like a heart rhythm. And I felt like how my whole body moved in these waves. And then I felt it like everywhere, that we were just kind of living that experience in the waves. And then I started seeing like all these, they have a special name, like lines, where they were appearing like around the objects in the room, and they were like opening, and then I felt like my body was, it had two sides, of course, like the left side and the right side, and I just kind of put my hands together, and I just had the feeling like I was putting like myself together, like I was like kind of melting these two parts together, and then I saw like a white light coming, and I was somewhere different. I was in another place. And then I was like kind of, I mean, I wasn't a kid, but I was something tiny, and I had like the perception of a kid. Like I had to look up at everyone, and there were like different beings, and I cannot really describe them because they didn't happen just in this 4-dimension or like 3-dimensional room. It was something different than that, and there was another deepness, and there were other colors, and it was very, they had like the body, but also like a kind of aura that you could see. And one of them talked to me, but like telepathically, and he was telling me like, welcome here, we have been waiting for you, and don't be scared. It's like, here is, everything is cool, everything is fine, we love you. And they felt like really, really nice. I mean, like somehow like a family. And all of them were different. And the one that was talking to me, I remember that he had like very, very long arms and long hair. And he told me also like, humans, that our reality is very simple, and the problems we have in our daily life are very simple, and that actually like everything is much more complicated than we think, and we shouldn't like waste our time with the little problems. I was starting to calm down somehow, and my boyfriend was like next to me, and then next to him was a candle, and I started like seeing that at the same time as being in this place. And I had some stress somehow from the situation, because I didn't know if my boyfriend would burn himself with the candle. And then this being told me like, it's fine, like let it go back. we're gonna see each other anyway again. And with this, I understood like he meant like if I do it again, the smoking thing, or if I die. And with that part was like, okay, this is a place where everyone comes after life.
I feel like psychedelic experiences are just a game changer to your consciousness, essentially. And I say psychedelic experiences because you can have psychedelic experiences without substances. So, for instance, like holotropic breathing or tantra or even like dreaming can be very psychedelic. And when I say psychedelic, I mean just like altered states of consciousness. I feel like it's super crucial in helping people to just live life more intentionally and just with more awareness. But what it's helped me to understand is that there is so much more out there than this like 3D realm of reality of what you think what everything is, you know? And it's really helped me to connect with like, you know, universal love consciousness, that we are all just one. We all come from the same source. In my opinion, we all come from the same source, and we've just like splintered off into all of our like individual experiences to report back to source the infinite potentiality of the human experience. And so, you know, psychedelics really help you to, you know, it's like, it's an infinite realm, you know, and to me, that's really important. And also like becoming, like feeling at peace with death. I feel like psychedelics just really like opens the veils, you know, to a different level of perspective. Just really like opening yourself up to the flow of what's possible and inviting other ideas than, you know, your very limited box of understanding of what you think of reality is. So that we can all contribute our learnings into the collective, so that the collective knows more, so that we can just continue to expand our consciousness.
Say accepting death, because I wouldn't say feeling death, because I don't know if it's really like that, but definitely of accepting my own death. I haven't sought a professional opinion, and I'm not saying this in an arrogant way, please don't get me wrong. So seeking a professional experience is something that I wouldn't do, and the reason is, so it can be something totally different than death. It can be just, you know, maybe my heartbeat playing funny and my body went in a bit of a shock. So it can be anything, and there's definitely a physical, I'm sure there's a physical explanation to it, or a scientific explanation to it. But for me, what's important is what I felt in that moment. So it's more myself accepting that if I'd shut my eyes and fall asleep, I'd be dead. So that's for me the biggest trigger. And if it was anything else, it doesn't really matter to me, because it still wouldn't change this feeling and this acceptance.
For me, the main takeaway is really that I was amazed that I was in the driving seat when this happened. Because I thought, and for me, my belief was always that the body will do it itself. You know, there is not... I really saw the mind within my experience that was working out the fact that I wanted to survive. And for me, that was the main takeaway that really blew my mind, because I was more on the down-to-earth kind of side that, yeah, the body will shut down and then that's the end and whatever. And they'll reanimate you, and that's a mechanic thing that they reanimate the heart. But what I felt was clearly me in the driver's seat and my mind, or my soul to push through. I just think in general death is such a personal subject. In general, maybe my perception will change within the years and within the time, and also within the experience that I will have. I just decided for a while to put it on the side and not really deep dive in it. But yeah, now that we were talking, I think it's there's a lot of question mark in my head, and I realized that I didn't really deep dive and make completely, understood everything that happened to me. Now I'm maybe a bit more interested in talking about it.
I talked to my mom about it and to my sisters, and because I felt a kind of, my father died tragically. He was murdered, and I think my family, all of them have like this kind of pain of such a tragic death. I would say as a grown-up, I'm okay with that destiny that I had. But with the experience, I also experimented, even like if you're lonely, it doesn't depend much about your surrounding. You are having this experience with yourself, like going somewhere that actually everyone is gonna have a nice experience, I think. And even if it's like in the middle of a war or whatever, the moment you die, I guess your soul or your information or your program or however you want to call it, your consciousness, just ends in this space, in this room that was open at that moment. And it's a nice space. So you're released and you are happy and you have kind of freedom and yeah. So that gave me hope of like maybe showing it to my family, and that they could also kind of work on this trauma, losing my father, and also the way he died. Yeah, I think so.
Before this accident, I never once thought like, wow, I'm so grateful for my teeth. They can chew my food. They make me not look like a toothless person, and now I like look at my legs, I'm like, oh my god, I have 2 legs that can walk, or like 2 eyes that can see. It really puts into perspective like how like gifted we are, how blessed we are to like be in this body, hopefully that's healthy, be in this body hopefully that could like see and hear, and if not, like finding ways like to interact with the world. It's very humbling. It's very humbling to know that you're not this like 25-year-old immortal rock star just riding her bike down all fast down a hill or something. Sometimes shit hits the fan, sometimes things get really challenging. And I remember just being in like the darkest moments of just like, please let me die. But then like coming back around that and being like, wow, like I have so much more appreciation for life. Everything happened exactly as it needed to, as painful and dark as it were at times. It made me exactly who I am today.
It is often said that before you die, your life passes before your eyes. It is in fact true. It's called living. Terry Pratchett.